Welcome. What is up? Welcome to the Mixer. I am your host, RC. I'm joined by my co-host here, Jeffrey. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
We are the Mixer, at least for now. This is the Mixer podcast. You can find us on wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe. We are on YouTube. Hit the bell. We're on socials at FCY Mixer. I think that's the cleanest I've ever done that.
Nice.
So rate and review. Say hi to us in the comments. Yeah, that's all done. We're gonna talk a little Formula One, a little NFL. We got the Belgian Grand Prix coming up this weekend. Start of a triple header after 3 weeks off for Formula One. I'm excited to get back into it. We had the driver debacle with Piastri being declared as a replacement for Fernando Alonso, and then all that drama that came with it. We kind of talked about that in the last episode, and this week, or within the last week, I can't remember exactly when now. Daniel Ricciardo. It was announced Daniel Ricciardo will not be continuing with McLaren for next season. McLaren have decided to go another direction. They haven't said what that is yet. It seems like the two sides really tried to work it out, try to get Ricciardo's performance to where they wanted it, and it just didn't happen. So we don't know what's next for Ricciardo. He said he wants to stay in Formula One. What was your reaction to this news, Jeff, when you first heard it?
It wasn't anything that was unexpected. I was a little surprised there wasn't kind of a dual announcement of him having a seat somewhere else. I thought that would be coming with it, personally. It is what it is. I think maybe Danny's unsure of where he wants to drive, or, it sounds like he has options from what I've read, but it's not a done deal anywhere. But yeah, that's the only thing that really surprised me. I'm actually a little surprised it didn't come out sooner, because we all knew, like, once this whole thing started, that Danny likely wasn't coming back. So it's probably just a matter of figuring out a buyout point where he was happy to take the money and McLaren was happy to pay him. And yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to it, I think.
So, I mean, I've been talking about Ricciardo getting out of McLaren for 2 seasons. I think when we first started talking Formula One, that was one of the hot takes. I brought up that he needed to start performing better. He was just getting dusted by Lando for far too long. Then we have Piastri wanting to go to McLaren along with some other drivers. Lando's still there. I've shared my theories on all that. So, like you said, it wasn't a huge surprise for me either. It is interesting that it has not been announced where he's going to go. And my read on that is it's truly up in the air. People are speculating Alpine, formerly Renault, who he raced for. What do you think about Ricciardo's chances of going to Alpine?
Before today, I would have said like 70%. After some of the things that came out today, I think it's like 50-50, to be honest.
What came out
Ocon,
today? I'm out of the loop.
Well, it's driver interview day, right? And Alpine has an open seat, and Ocon, who is under contract there and is in the other seat, is BFFs with Mick Schumacher, who does not have a contract for next year. Now, Ocon today said he would love that Mick would be his first choice as a teammate. He also said he would not lobby the team for Mick. He would let the team decide, but it felt like that was his like kind of lobby, if we put it that way. But yeah, I would say that I think it's more 50-50 now. I do think Ricciardo will have a seat if he wants it, though. I don't think he'll just be like, they asked him if he'd be willing to sit out a year and stuff like that. I don't think he'll have to do that. But you never know, right? Like some weird things happen. Maybe he asked for too much money or something like that. But I think at the very least, he might have a seat at Williams or Haas. Like they would be thrilled to have a guy like him probably. So, I really just think it's up to him at this point. But as I said before today, I probably would have put it like 70+% that he goes to Alpine. He had good performances there. Yes, he left, but that was under a little bit different management, right? But now after today, after hearing the Mick and Ocon thing, I don't think drivers necessarily get to pick their, teammate, but it probably is nice to have guys that like each other. And depending on what Alpine thinks about Mick, you never know. So that's why I think it's more of a toss-up now.
Mm-hmm. I've kind of gone back and forth on Alpine and Ricciardo. I mean, they were formerly Renault, and the people I listen to are saying, well, he burned that bridge because I mean, I think he was still under contract when he left Renault, and he left Red Bull to go to Renault to be like the face of Renault, and then he bailed on Renault to go to McLaren when he got the chance, and that supposedly that didn't sit too well with Renault. They were having really major problems with their engines, almost like Ferrari is now at the time. So, and I mean, they were mid pack, but I mean, they were doing better than like he's doing in McLaren now. And at the time, Ocon was his teammate, and Ricciardo handled Ocon just fine. Ricciardo doesn't, or excuse me, Ocon doesn't get along with his teammates. He has a history of that. There's tension between him and Fernando. There was tension between him and Sergio Perez when they were at Racing Point / Force India / whatever the hell it was called when they were together on that team. I think it was Racing Point then. So, methinks Esty Bestie is not going to want to be alongside Daniel Ricciardo because Ricciardo beat him in the same machinery a la Nico Rosberg against Lewis Hamilton in 2016? I don't know the tweet.
Yeah, I think
Or the
it's
meme.
2016.
Ooh, nailed it. So methinks that one's not likely, like at all. I think it's more likely that Piastri mends the fences and ends up in that number 2 slot than it is Ricciardo at this point. I mean, I just really don't see it happening. But then again, Alpine, there seems to be something like dysfunctional with him, so they might just be. Am I using this word correctly? You have to tell me. They might be the ratchet F1 team. Is that?
I mean, I think the Ratchet F1 team would probably be like
Ferrari?
Haas or
Oh,
Williams,
okay.
or even Ferrari, right? Like Alpine they're weird up and down, right? Like Fernando today said that everyone at Alpine except for Otmar knew he was leaving or something like that. Like there's just some weird stuff going on there.
Yeah, and they had Alain Prost, who is like a Formula One legend of the late 80s, early 90s, French driver, Alpine's French team. And he was like one of the primary consultants. And then they just, like, I think he either left or they got rid of him. And he was really upset. And there just seemed to be a lack of professionalism from whatever that happened. But then again, I'm not a huge Prost fan, so maybe he's the asshole in this situation. I mean, I guess we don't know, but yeah, something's not all peaches and cream there at Alpine. So yeah, I don't think that's likely. The next favorite sounds like it's Haas, especially with what you're saying now. Um, Haas hasn't been too happy with the performance of Mick Schumacher, who has done better in recent races, but had that rough start. Had like, was it 3, 4 bad accidents? Maybe it was 2 this season
Well,
and
it
1
was,
late last season.
yeah, I think that's what it was. It's only been 2 like really bad ones this year, but they were really bad.
Yeah, like complete write offs, like millions of
Yeah.
dollars of repairs. And Haas like, we don't really. Do you know how many boat catalog picks I'm gonna have to do to pay for that? Gunther Steiner just like, he's like, I'm gonna start having to do them topless. I'm gonna start at OnlyFans. All thanks to you, Mick. All thanks to you. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're still up in the air with continuing with him continuing on the team. It sounds like Ferrari, who probably covers a portion of his salary because he's part of the Ferrari Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like they're out on him. Um, yeah, which is maybe possibly a ringing endorsement on Mick Schumacher actually having a chance at a successful career if Ferrari's out on him, um, because they always make the wrong decisions. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about Ricciardo to Haas?
I think it would be entertaining, and I think Haas would get a lot more screen time than they already a lot of screen time they get on Drive to Survive. Um, I think that Danny versus K Mag would be interesting. Um, it would also be interesting to see like if they get that car figured out and they actually upgrade it. Um, what happens there? Because as we've seen at certain points during this year, that car is pretty good. They've been
Mm-hmm.
in the top 10, both of them at the same time. Magnussen at Imola, although Imola was a weird weekend, was like fifth at one point, or like top 5 in qualifying or something like that. Like, that car has some potential. Now they haven't upgraded it nearly the way like heck even McLaren's upgraded theirs. So I don't know where they would fall, but I think that would be an interesting pairing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Williams is also interesting. Um, Alfa Romeo is still kind of technically out there because they haven't, as far as I know, locked in Joe for next year, even though I think he deserves the seat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe that's somewhere a Valtteri Danny Rick combo would be interesting. But I think that Danny and Gunter would bring all the memes and would be all over Drive to Survive. That would be a fun
Mm-hmm.
pairing.
Yeah, yeah, that would be that would be awesome for entertainment value. Plus, there is that NASCAR tie-in with Haas. It's Newman Haas, who the owner, who or the ownership group. I don't know if it's 2 people or 1, but anyway, they have a NASCAR team, and yeah, Danny Rick loves him some NASCAR. So there's that element. Is American team technically, I guess American ownerships, but it's stationed in England still, I believe, or maybe it's France. I don't know. It's in Europe. The garages are in Europe. They're not building the cars here and shipping them. They are built in Europe with American, uh, partially fine American name and Russian blood money that did all kinds of paid for all kinds of wind tunnel testing. So I mean, that's another factor. Like, how's Haas gonna find the financing with Nikita Mazepin's dad and being sanctioned? So yeah, a lot of things up in the air that may complicate things for Haas, but we're not going to know any of that. So we just got to speculate. But yeah, I mean, that would be my top pick for him. Um, Haas is that mid pack team that can surprise. Kevin Magnuson's pretty good. I kind of wish he would go away. He's kind of just like this boring Him and like Bottas, I could just do without on the grid. But I mean, they're fine drivers. It's just like you don't get any storylines with them. It's just I feel the same way about like 50 to 60% of the IndyCar grid. Like I watch
Yeah.
much more IndyCar, but like half of them are the same guy.
Yeah.
They're just like, I
I
don't
will
know.
say that the thing about Magnuson that is exciting is he has the ability at seemingly like random tracks, it feels like, to, just put the car at its maximum spot, right? But then he just doesn't have the patience to take advantage of it. Like we've seen this in Canada at Barcelona, where like he just tries to do things and then ends up making contact with somebody, and then granted, like however you feel about the little meatball flag and making him stop because like his front wings damaged or whatever, but like he just puts himself in bad positions, I think, and doesn't. He doesn't have the best racecraft if we're talking about that, right? Like he's decent qualifying, but he seems to always put the car in the wrong spot and hurts himself.
Mm-hmm.
If he were a little more patient, I think he'd probably be a little more exciting. I think you might feel differently because he'd probably get some like better than expected results. But he just seems to always shoot himself in the foot, and so then it's like, all right, like we don't need you out here anymore.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I think he told his teammate to suck his balls in a race
That was
way
Hulkenberg, I
back.
think, right?
Yeah, yeah, another one of those kind of generic create your Formula One avatar drivers. Um, so I mean, and then there's the rest of the field. I don't know where else he could go. I mean, AlphaTauri is a possibility. It sounds like Red Bull might be out on Sonoda, but I think they're getting some money from. He's Japanese, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the Honda engine supply deal. Honda always wants to have a Japanese driver
Yeah,
in one of their cars, so yeah, that complicates things. And like you said with Joe, I think he's brings in financing as well. Um,
he's also been
so
good, right? He's got
yeah,
like
yeah,
four
he's been pretty
mechanical
good.
DNFs and stuff. Like, I don't mean like he's not setting the world on fire, but like he's been around points almost every race that he hasn't
Hmm.
had a mechanical issue. Like, he deserves another year.
Right. Yeah, he's but Latifi, I think we can agree is probably out, and it sounds like Williams wants to bring that American driver in, Sargent. So I mean, we could even see him in a race by the end of the year. Um, but I mean, I wouldn't mind Ricardo at Williams. It would just be so sad. Um, we'd be talking about like if Ricardo made it into Q Q3 at one point next season in a Williams, that's headline uh headline making. So I don't want to see him languishing at the back of the grid. I would rather see him mid pack and you know, rubbing elbows with the guys there.
Yeah.
So we got Spa coming up. My favorite track. It's just beautiful. It's in the forest where they fought the Battle of the Bulge. It's got it's been redesigned slightly. I think they changed the Eau Rouge Radillon complex. I don't know how much because to me it looks like the entry to Eau Rouge is a little or I guess the exit is a little wider. It takes it kicks out wider to the left than it used to, but yeah, I mean, can't really tell. They definitely added some grandstands there. So it's going to have a little bit different look, but I think they did it to slow down the cars going up the hill there a little, just slightly, because Sadly, we had that death in Formula 2 like 2 or 3 years ago now. So yeah, and just a lot of bad accidents there. Lando's last year in qualifying was pretty scary. But yeah, I mean, multiple sports. I've seen sports car accidents there. They're pretty gnarly. there's there's this one. I think it happened in practice or like a test session. The car. I mean, it just kind of came up because me and or like one of our friends was talking about Mark Webber and how he had the tendency to flip vehicles, and then there's the sports car. Getting airborne. That happened at the top of that hill in like 2016, 2015, somewhere around there. A prototype, yeah, went airborne and flew over the fence, flew over the
Jesus.
barriers. Yeah, pretty gnarly. I'll have to find that, and I think it was it was a Russian vehicle because of course it was. Um, yeah, yeah, just pretty wild stuff. I think that was probably just more the car design than anything else. But dangerous spot. How do you see this, or what are you excited for at this track, Jeff? I know you hit me with
Uh,
some news from someone in Reddit, which we can take as
well, hold on, hold
100%
on.
accurate. Okay.
The news. I sent you a Reddit thread. The news is actually from a reporter who tweeted it out.
Okay. So
Um,
Twitter.
yeah,
All
but
right.
I'm excited because I love Spa as well. I think it's a fun track to drive on the F1 games. It is, you know, they can kind of just push the cars as hard as they want throughout most of the track. There's also a few like dive bomb spots in terms of like passing and everything. I did see a tweet that they added gravel to the outside of turn one this year. That was part of like the remake of the track. So it'll be interesting to see people how they take that turn, especially if they're next to a car,
they,
right? Like,
they added gravel to outside of turn one.
yeah. So that
Hmm.
like sharp turn, the
Yeah,
as they come out
LaSource.
of it, yeah, as they come out of it, there's gravel on the outside now. So, someone goes down the inside. Granted, it's a slow turn, right? But
Uh-huh.
someone goes down the inside. Maybe you open up the wheel a little bit, push someone off, you know, or force
Yeah.
them to like really slow down. Um, but then there's the other news that it seems like Max and Charles and maybe some other drivers are going to be taking engine penalties. Um, and if that's the case, they start from 1920. Uh, it could make for a lot of entertaining overtakes, as Max and Charles are likely going to just pass 3/4 of the field pretty easily. Um, now depending on who else may or may not be taking penalties, maybe there's a Mercedes in there taking a penalty, or some other guys, who really knows. But that'll be fun. It'll be you can kind of see what a reverse grid may look like to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Although I doubt there's that many guys. But I think it really opens the door for like a possible Mercedes win if they don't take any penalties and they just
They
race it.
shouldn't have to.
Right. I
Mercedes
don't
is
think they
pretty
have
good
to
on their
either.
components.
Um, but yeah, that's really what I'm excited for is if Max and Charles are in the back, like they're probably still going to finish top 5 or 6. I would be surprised if they don't. But I would be I highly doubt either one of them would win the race. So then that really opens it up for the Mercedes boys or Carlos and Sergio. Um, and yeah, I think that would make for a very, very exciting race.
Mm-hmm. It's a good track to take penalties on because of the long straights. Um, pretty. I think it's at least before the design or the redesign, it was the longest flat out section of a track in any track on the calendar. I don't know if they're going to have to lift going up the hill with the redesign. So it's actually kind of a narrow track, but you have the run down the hill into the final chicane too, which is a usual good spot to make passes. So if you're coming up through the field, you have two of the best passing opportunities on the F1 calendar. So you're not going to be hung up behind Latifi for 2 or 3
Well,
laps, or Fernando Alonso backing up half the freaking field like at
you might be
Monaco
behind
and any other street.
Latifi after he finishes in first in qualifying.
I know he's been on one recently. So the thing that doesn't make sense to me is why would they both take the penalties? I feel like, and I mean, they might wait until later in the weekend to actually, or after qualifying, to take the penalties and change all the components. But like, I mean, I guess Red Bull has the lead, but like, why would Ferrari not risk it to get the biscuit? If Max is taking the penalty, is it just Ferrari making a bad decision again? Or I mean, I guess they would just be like thinking there's no way this power unit makes it to the end of the race.
I think there could be a lot of things going on here, but I have a feeling it's more that Ferrari was going to do it, and then Red Bull figured, well, if we just have Max match Charles, they're not
Yeah.
going to gain anything, right? And there's probably less risk of Max having any issues in the race if they swap things, right? Even if his components don't necessarily need to be changed. But if they're older, or if they're going to need to be changed in a couple races anyway, why not do it when Charles does it? That way, maybe Charles beats you in the race, but you're losing, like 2 to 6 points instead of 25 potentially, type thing. The guy sent it in our group chat. If I'm Max and I'm Red Bull, I kind of just match whatever Charles does the rest of the way. If he's going to take penalties, I take penalties. If he's not, then I won't, unless it's absolutely necessary, kind of thing. Like, you have a big enough lead. You're really just in a position now where you just hold on to it. And yeah, I think for Red Bull, now if Red Bull were the ones doing it initially, then I think Ferrari should not take it unless they absolutely have to, because Charles needs to maximize his, like, the difference in points between him and Max.
Yeah, it's just
so that's what makes me think that it's Ferrari is doing this regardless, and Red Bull is just, we need to do this in the next couple of races, so let's do it now, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna. So we have Spa, then the Dutch Grand Prix, Zandvoort, twisty, windy, turny, Max's home race, and then we have the Italian Grand Prix at Monza after that. So back to back to back. So I mean, this track is tough on engines. Next track, not so much. And then Monza, the Italian Grand Prix, Ferrari's home race, tough on engines. I mean, I don't know if I were but the thing that is kind of complicates things is the Ferrari's like weirdly good at the twisty track, and they could be looking to spoil Verstappen at his home race. But I mean, you want, are they going to take penalties at Monza? Are they going to risk blowing that up at Monza? Like, that's a spicy meatball.
This could be in preparation of Monza as well, partly, right? Like, as you said, Spa is going to be tough on the engines. So put a new engine in. You're going to be able to pass 3/4 of the field, right? Like that's not really much of an issue, or maybe not quite 3/4, but you're going to be able to pass most of the field. And then now when you go to Monza, you don't need an engine penalty, and you've got the new engine on its second race type thing.
It'd be third race though, because they'd be
Well, you don't necessarily have
because
to use the week, right? Like they can switch
yeah,
components in and out. So maybe they switch to an older one for Zandvoort and then back to the new one for Monza, similar to what Mercedes did with Lewis last year when they gave him the
yeah,
rocket and then they switched back for a couple races and then put it back in type thing.
yeah. I mean, I hope it's whatever their plan is. I hope they stagger and that they don't run the same engine that they're going to run here at Spot Monza, because that is, I mean, the engine should be, doing like 4 races or something, but I don't. Yeah, that's with how the Ferrari reliability has been. It's really taking a risk. Maybe they're hoping for rain. I don't know. Forecast says no rain for race day. Chance of rain Friday and Saturday. But yeah, I'm excited to get back in the swing of things and possibly see, the Mercedes guys up there. It'd be nice to just have Mercedes, the Mercedes drivers against the number twos for Red Bull and Ferrari. Uh, and we have the new floor regulations, so they shouldn't have the flexi floors. A lot of variables, but yeah, I mean, I checked the betting odds, which seems to typically be a good indicator of what the in the when you had told me, or that post was up there, that it's likely they're going to be taking penalties. I went and checked the odds, and the odds are still up. Usually, when there's some sort of report, they pull them.
Yeah.
And it had Max as a favorite at like -125, which isn't huge. Isn't a huge. It's not like a heavy favorite. Like last year, um, Lewis was like regularly -175, -200, and Leclerc was like +150. Sainz was like +450. And then Lewis was like still like +800, and George was. I mean, I'm probably getting it wrong, but yeah, their odds didn't seem to reflect that Leclerc and Max might be taking penalties. So, but I mean, maybe they're just not tuned in. They don't have somebody. They don't have the pit boss monitoring Formula One news so heavily. But yeah, I threw some shekels on the other 4 drivers. Sainz, Sainz, Russell, Hamilton, and Perez. The disrespect. Perez is like +1,500. He was the lowest out of all 4 of them.
Really?
even though his teammate's the favorite. I mean, I guess that plays into it because they're like, well, Max ain't gonna let him win. But
Right.
yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Well,
Um,
I think part of it with Perez too is like, let's say that Max does take the penalty, and then somehow Max comes around and is magically in second behind Perez with like 10 laps to go.
mhm.
I think there's a very real chance that Red Bull just says, "Hey, you two swap," and Max takes the win. Right? Like, they're very much willing to do that. Uh, and so I think that's kind of built into Sergio's lines a lot, is that he may be leading a race and give it up because of team orders type thing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So the odds are Max at -120, Leclerc +550. Hamilton's actually the second. He's at +500. So Vegas likes Hamilton more than Charles. Then we have Sainz +600, George Russell +850, Sergio Perez plus 1,600. So, anywho, Those are the odds I'm looking at. And yeah, so anywho, do you prediction time? Nuts on the table. Who's winning? Who's winning? Got any
Um,
bold predictions?
without without taking the potential engine penalties into account, right? Let's assume everyone's just starting from wherever they qualify. Leclerc's going to win. I think that Ferrari is the best car. I think it's been the best car for pretty much the whole season, except for a couple races here and there early. And I just have faith that he'll pull it off. If we take Charles and Max out, and let's say that they do take the engine penalties, I will take Lewis over anyone. Um, I just think that his results recently, in a car that hasn't quite caught up to the top two, but is getting closer. He's finished third, 3 weeks in a row. So I imagine you take those top guys out, he's got a pretty good shot at first. So that would be my pick there. Yeah, I'm going Charles or Lewis.
I like it. That's what I would normally pick as well. But I just, it's almost like a no. Max is going to win somehow. Takes the penalty, he's going to win. Qualifies fifth, he's going to win. Misses Q3, starts 11th. I don't know how. The dude just keeps doing it. So, really going to go out on a limb and say Max somehow, some way does it. It's really interesting that you mentioned the gravel outside of La Source, the first sharp corner there. I've been rewatching previous Belgian Grand Prix, and yeah, a lot of bold moves into that corner. Hopefully, that'll tamper it down, and a lot of cars do go wide. So, yeah, maybe over under two cars beached in the gravel uh, after
I'm gonna
the
say
first corner.
I'm saying under because I think they'll be able to get off the gravel. But I would
Yeah.
say over how many? I would say over two cars go into the gravel.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because, yeah, I've been watching it and there's seriously like a quarter of the grid just runs wide there. Don't even bother with the inside. A lot of really stupid moves down into that corner, including one from Max Verstappen, who got just like the worst start in, I think it was 2019, something like that. Um, yeah, probably like the last mistake he's made in a while because he's been freaking lights out since. I mean, aside from his shenanigans with Hamilton last year, but yeah, we know how that went. It was intentional. You know, those weren't mistakes. This one was probably a mistake. Um, so yeah, that's the F1 Belgian Grand Prix preview. I'm excited. I can't wait to get back to it. Speaking of getting back to it, we got the NFL really ramping into high gear here. We got Aaron Donald swinging helmets at practice with the Bengals today. We got Dan Campbell being very vascular on Hard Knocks. Michael Thomas, slant boy, hurt again. This time hamstring. I'm old enough to remember when Michael Thomas played football, and Pete Carroll says they have two QB1s in Seattle, so that'll be fun. Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm ready for our fantasy football draft. Do you have any thoughts on the NFL coming up here?
Um, my my best thought currently is that Hard Knocks with the Lions is top notch. Dan Campbell has completely won me over. as a coach. I'm not fully sold on the team, obviously, but last year I thought he was a joke. Um, but then they kind of grew on me last year. But then watching them in Hard Knocks this year, I love like that whole setup that he's got. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's awesome. I will have my, I've been going through it this offseason as a former lifelong
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland Brown fan. I will have my new team announcement next week.
Ah,
Yeah, not
okay.
today, but uh, we've narrowed it down. Um, it's it's been tough, but I've got a few teams picked out, and I'll announce the winner, who will get my fandom next week. Uh, Other than that, getting excited for these fantasy drafts. It looks like we might do an auction. I kind of hope we do. They are. I just like the strategies there, right? Like stars and scrubs, balanced, or just the all trash option where you just don't spend any money until late. That's a unique build, but it happens
Yeah.
occasionally. I've got a few drafts starting this weekend. Um, have one I think tomorrow night, then a couple on Sunday. Um, yeah, glad to get going.
Yeah, I got one tomorrow that I kind of just remembered, so that'll be fun. But I've already done my ranks. I just forgot it was tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Um, Obviously, really looking forward to see how the Chargers do this season. And I mean, just the AFC West versus the NFC West. Most 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 game totals over 50 points for the season between those two divisions. So, we got Russell Wilson, let's ride in Denver. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the memes. Looking forward to Antonio Brown giving his commentary on the NFL as a spectator. Uh,
Too bad he can't
another
watch himself play.
another year of Tom Brady. Will he? Won't he retire? Will Gronk or will not Gronk come back? Jameis, Jameis getting the freaking the keys to the whole offense. No more Taysom Hill. Um, and what else do we got? Oh, and we got. Did you see the clip of Bill Belichick wearing the UFC belt and grinning like a freaking schoolgirl?
I did not,
I think he might be getting soft. Like his
because
team
he
totally,
smiled.
yeah, his team totally lacked discipline at at their joint practices with the Titans. Was it the Titans or the Colts?
The Lions were with the Colts.
No, okay, so who
Yeah,
was
him
it?
and Vrabel. That makes sense with the Titans.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, the joint practice. Oh, Panthers. It was the Panthers. There was all kinds of fights, and yeah, and then like on top of that, supposedly they're adapting a new run scheme this year and kind of tailoring it after the San Francisco Kyle Shanahan style, or so I've heard. Uh, it's like, what are you doing, Bill? Like, you know, I don't know. To me, it feels like I'm getting divorced dad vibes from Bill Belichick. Like he thinks he's living his best life, getting weird with exotic offenses, um, and smiling by putting on jewelry from somebody else. But in reality, he's like in shambles and just like looks at a picture of Tom Brady before going to bed every night.
I will
Not that I
not
would know
doubt.
anything about any of that.
I won't doubt Bill until I see the Patriots actually be bad in a real season. And what I mean by that is that the one bad season they've had was the year they lost Tom Brady. and like half their team sat out because of COVID in 2020. Even last year with a rookie Mac Jones, they were a pretty good team for a lot of the year.
Yeah, they beat the Chargers.
There's changes on the coaching staff this year. Matt goes into year 2. I'm not
Oh,
surprised that stuff is changing, but like I think they'll still be pretty good.
they didn't even know who was going to be the offensive coordinator. They
You
were
don't need
like,
one.
well, good point. But they're like, isn't Patricia isn't he the OC? And he was
Oh
like,
yeah,
wasn't he the
who guy who's
DC?
never coached an offense before in his life is going to be
I
their
mean,
offensive coordinator now.
yeah. Well, if anybody could do it, it's a rocket scientist. I'm gonna love hearing that freaking recycled take all the time. Um, yeah, so that'll be fun to watch. Got any predictions? Super Bowl prediction. Lock it in. Who you got?
I don't have a Super Bowl prediction. I
Oh,
have.
lame.
I'll give you one next week, but I'll give you my best offense in the league prediction. I'm really stepping out on a limb here, and I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean it'll be great to see how he does with 5 wide receiver threes and Travis Kelsey. But if
I mean,
anybody can do it, Patrick Mahomes can do it.
Juju's going to get back. Juju will be a wide receiver 1 this year. Lock that in right now.
Yeah, I
Juju's
mean,
25 still. Already has multiple 1,000-yard seasons.
it's like half age of Joe Burrow.
Only reason he hasn't reached 1,000 yards the last couple of years is because he's had washed up Ben Roethlisberger, who can only throw the ball 3 yards down the field, throw to him.
Yeah. Isn't he on a
Deontay
1-year deal?
Johnson, Juju, I think so. Deontay Johnson, who got like 170 targets last year, thanks to Ben can't throw the ball down the field, will be the worst fantasy pick this year that doesn't get injured.
Interesting.
That's my take on those two, one former Steeler and one current Steeler.
Yeah. Well, the rookie there looks pretty good. And they still got Claypool. So I don't know so much about Deontay Johnson, especially with freaking Mitchell Trubisky there. And it sounds like who was their quarterback that they drafted that was the first quarterback off the board, and I should know, but I can't think of Kenny Pickett. They got him there. I guess he's been doing all right. So not looking good for my Mitchell Trubisky comeback player of the year bet that I put in. There's still hope. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've kind of wishful thinking, projecting the Chiefs not to do so well this year, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I got Mahomes on one of my teams.
The Chargers can be the best team in the league, and the Chiefs can still do really well.
Yeah. So somebody on Twitter, some blue check mark posted, give me your NFL hot takes, like, and I said that the Chiefs will finish last in the AFC West with a winning record.
Okay, so I didn't have the Chiefs, but I actually think the same thing will happen. I think whoever finishes last in the AFC West will have a winning record.
That'd be interesting, but yeah, I mean, like the worst team in that division is the Raiders on paper, and they made it to the playoffs last year and brought Devontae Adams in.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of good games. So it's gonna be a fun one. Probably gonna be a lot of stress, but that is football for us. You got any other thought? Well, you didn't give a Super Bowl prediction.
Yeah, I don't have one. I got this
right.
is my thought. I think that the Bills, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Ravens are probably my top 4 teams individually. But if I were betting on a team, I'd probably bet on a team in the NFC because they're going to have an easier path to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Does that
I
make
could see it.
sense?
Yeah, I can see it being freaking Rodgers versus Brady NFC title game. Lambeau or Packers versus Bucks, assuming they both make it through the whole season without retiring or getting on an ayahuasca trip. Um,
I still think the Rams will be really good, but
yeah, there's the Ram, but I mean Matthew Stafford needs Tommy John apparently, or something's going on with his elbow, so you don't know about that. But yeah, I mean you're right; they are the Super Bowl winners, and then I think it'll be Bengals who day again because Joe Burrow does not know how to lose. He does not know how to take L's. This is not in his DNA. And I'm just going to remove the Chargers from the equation because I don't want to get my hopes up. And I'm gonna say the Broncos. Russell Wilson just puts the team on his back. Let's ride. Steers into the memes. Just rolls with it, and somehow gets the Broncos to the Super Bowl, and then they get blown out by whatever NFC team is there because they're playing on a neutral site, not at freaking Mile High Stadium. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Russell Wilson does away from Pete Carroll. We'll really get a true measure of the dude.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean Denver still has a good defense, and it's unfair because they have a major home field advantage playing at the altitude.
yeah,
But I mean, I feel like the AFC is pretty wide open. There's just a lot of really good teams, and I could see those really good teams just beating the shit out of each other. And
exactly.
you have a like battle hardened team like the Broncos with a stout defense, um, getting through. But I mean, who the fuck knows, man? Nobody would have predicted the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl last year. They were what was their over under like 5.5 in a
I think it was
17
more
game
than that, but
season.
it wasn't. It wasn't a lot.
Yeah, it was pretty low. It might have been 6.5, but yeah, I wouldn't say it was more than 7.5 because that would be one game under 500, or kind of. There's no 500 anymore until they add the 18th games for all the teams mandatory in Europe or Mexico. That'll be fun. Um, Anything else, sir? Are you ready to get out of here?
I gotta head to a meeting, so I'm
Sweet.
ready to
Let's
go.
get this pumpernickel. PF Chang's time. To Dalu. Enjoy the races. Enjoy the preseason. See ya.